Gonna take it. Got it! Boston wins!
Two legends in basketball analysis with over 70 years combined experience. This is the Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman podcast.
NBA, some college, a little bit of everything.
You know, what can I say? But it wasn't going to happen here with him. I was okay with it because it wasn't about talent, I didn't think.
All right, let's get right to it.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Ryan and Goodman podcast. We're your hosts, none other than Robert Ryan and Jeff Goodman. And Bob is joining us from the plush estates, the Ryan Estates in Hingham, Massachusetts. I'm in Newburyport, Mass, and it is getting a little chilly here in our state, Bob.
Winter has arrived, yes. It's not technically it's December 21st, but it's here. You know that.
Yeah, luckily, I'm headed to some warmth. I'm headed to see a kid named Anthony Edwards, Georgia. Could be the number one overall pick tomorrow.
Very good.
They play Georgia Tech. And then I'm going to head down to Charleston for a tournament there in Myrtle Beach. So I'll at least be getting some good meals and some sun, hopefully, in Charleston.
I'll be holding down the home fort for you. Don't worry.
What are you going to be doing? What's the Bob Ryan life like the next few days?
I am going on Wednesday night. I'm very happy to say for the annual tradition at Boston Garden and the Sports Museum's annual honoring of athletes. And I'm going to be a part of the program because I am presenting Paul Silas.
Nice.
Who's coming up from his home in North Carolina with his family to be honored for maybe it was brief, but it was an impactful 4 years in Celtic history from 1972, 73 through 75, 76, which included 2 championships, a 68-win season, and a loss in the Eastern Conference Finals. They had a real shot at 4 in a row. They got 2, and Paul Silas was an instrumental part of that run. And, you know, he always says he played 16 years in the NBA, and the only 4 anybody remembers are the 4 in Boston. Well, that's not quite true, but it's a good stump speech for him to make.
All right, so let's move on to what I think is the biggest story in the NBA these days, and I think that is none other than James Harden and what he's doing with the Rockets. They won 8 straight. He's averaging nearly 40 a game.
That's Wilt territory now. You know,
it is, and it's not a shock because again, we know Harden can score. And can score in every way imaginable. But the big question mark was obviously how were Harden and Westbrook going to coexist?
Yes.
You know, a year ago, I remember seeing them in Indiana early on in the season last year, and they were under 500 early, and asking Mike D'Antoni kind of what's the issue here? How long do you think it's going to take to figure this thing out and get going? And they had a bunch of injuries. But as of mid-December last year, Bob, the Houston Rockets were a 500 team. Right now, they're second in the West. I think they're a game behind the Lakers. And they're rolling, and they're far ahead of schedule what anybody thought when you threw Harden and Westbrook together, because everybody thought, there's only one basketball. These guys are ball dominant. They seem to have figured it out pretty well early with those two guys, especially Eric Gordon's hurt now.
I think the key was going to have to be that, as amazing as it sounds, that Westbrook was going to have to humble himself. Yeah. He was moving into the other guy's house. Not, and that way. And he had to accept that, or else it wasn't going to work. So it appears that to some degree he has. I'm looking at the numbers. He's close. I mean, he's not averaging a triple double yet this year, he's averaging nice number, 21 points a game, 7, 8, he's fine. Harden, it's just off the chart. It's more than ever. It's his show. And I, to some degree, I mean, you have to give Russell Westbrook credit for accommodating himself to that. He was going to have to do it, Jeff. It was going to work. And if he didn't, it wasn't going to work. And I guess that's all we can say. The other thing about them was interesting. When Capella went down last year, I loudly proclaimed that this is a loss they could not sustain because there was nobody else that fit that job description on the roster. And yet they did survive, which proved I was wrong about that. But it's as important as he is, it was clear as long as Harden kept doing what he was doing, they were going to survive. But what he's doing, we're talking Jordan Wilt territories. When you're talking when the first digit of an average is threatening to be a 4, this has only happened in the league once before, and that was Wilt Chamberlain 2 different times.
The one thing I'll say about Russell Westbrook is he gets a bad rap in a sense because he can be difficult to deal with. he can be ball dominant. He's not a great shooter at all. However, I do think ultimately what Westbrook wants more than anything else is to win. And you watch him and you can see it with that kind of intensity. And even after a game, if you're talking to him post game and they lose, he is miserable. It doesn't matter whether he went for 40 or 10. He's miserable. If they win, he's generally in a good mood, whether, again, he goes for 10 or 40.
Well, that's important. That's highly important. That's the way it should be. Yep. And it's the only way it was going to work. By the way, he's come out and a very nice public statement about his admiration for Harden. Yep. And what Harden is doing. And I'm just going to quote here. He said, I think a lot of people want to normalize what James Harden is doing. He said, it's not normal. He said there's nobody else that can do it. And, of course, we go back to what Mike D'Antoni has said as him being the greatest offensive player that he's certainly one, obviously, that he's ever coached, but clearly that he's even ever seen. And when he first said that last year, a lot of us wanted to scoff, because of our distaste for the style of play that Harden. This is part of the story, which is why it's such a fascinating story. As there's never been a player accomplishing what he's accomplished that has irritated so many people simply because they don't like the way it looks.
I don't mind it. Listen, I enjoy basketball. So however you're going to get it done, I have a high appreciation for it, whether it's Michael Jordan and the freak athleticism and Wilt doing it mostly in the post, Harden doing it without, the highest level of athleticism, but really doing it using angles, getting to the line. He obviously can shoot the ball from deep. So I really like Harden in that respect. I don't understand these people that come out and hammer him.
Well, the people seem to resent the idea that he gets to the line. The idea whether they call it flopping or whatever it is he does. To me, it's a throwback ability that guys have had certain people have had it over the years. They've known Paul Pierce had it to a degree. Which is why I say, and Ginobili had it to a degree, and I say that they were combinations of the 50s and the 21st century players, and then to that degree, Harden is too. This ability to get to the line, his box scores, and I'm a box score freak. His box scores are just eternally fascinating, and on a nightly basis. 12, 18, whatever, and I mean, and more than any player, historically, he's in a very small list of players that routinely has more free throws than field goals in games. And that's a skill. That's an incredible skill.
Yeah, I mean, 8 straight games with 35 plus, averaging 39
average
points per game in the first 14 games, Bob. And all his numbers are up. His shooting percentages are down a bit. But he had some bad games early. He had some really bad games to start the season. Over the last 8 games, again, he's been incredible. And the big question is the supporting cast going to be strong enough, right? PJ Tucker, I love. The key really has been Daniel House has been terrific. Who's a kid who played at Texas A&M. I mean, he bounced around in the NBA a little bit. Yeah. Not too many people know a lot about him, but he's been really good so far this year.
As they used to say, he could stump the panel on What's My Line, Daniel House, if he walked into a room of basketball fans. Eric Gordon, another flashpoint player, right? Yeah. Another hot button issue player, right? I mean, people have their opinions about him and his stability as a player and his erratic nature and his, can you rely on him? That's the big, it's a legitimate question.
You know what's interesting? How many people thought going into the year that Mike D'Antoni was dead man walking? And now it looks like, all right, he's figured this thing out, right?
You mentioned the 8 games in a row of 35. They're 8 W's in a row is what we're talking about here. So that's what I'm saying.
D'Antoni gives freedom. He's the mellowest coach you'll ever be around. I mean, it does nothing rattles this guy, nothing at all. And I think that helps guys like Westbrook, like Harden. In the NBA these days, especially, you need a player's coach. You need somebody. We were talking to Rick Carlisle when he came in last week a little bit about how it's changed now and how you deal with a player. And he was talking about Luka and said, listen, I had to change in terms of how I'm going to coach Luka. I can't I can't overcoach him. I gotta allow him to be him and let him play with freedom. And Mike D'Antoni is almost like the ultimate at that, of letting guys go.
Let's take a 20 very quickly. Luka Doncic last evening, 40-point triple-double.
Not bad.
So, and then this is the ESPN is so hung up on the youngest. He's the youngest. All right, so another young milestone with his numbers last night, ladies and gentlemen, for Luka Doncic. But he's extraordinary. But Mike D'Antoni, for people that really want to get an insight into Mike D'Antoni, Jack McCallum wrote a wonderful book years ago called 7 Seconds to Shoot about his year hanging around the Suns, the year they might very well have won if there wasn't an injury to Stoudemire or the suspension, whatever the hell it was that year. Now, there was a problem. They were damn good enough to win that year. It's closest that Mike D'Antoni has come so well. He's come close. And there was a question as to whether he could ever win, if he's ever going to coach defense and all. But you get a good insight into his thought process and what a really interesting fellow Mike D'Antoni is.
So the Rockets, a little bit of a surprise, but not that much. I mean, they've got the talent. They've got 2 of the top 10 talents in the league. But the Miami Heat are 9-3, Bob. 9-3. I know they got Jimmy Butler. I get it. Like, Jimmy's terrific, but I always thought Jimmy would be, really ultimately is a good number 2 guy for a team that wants to win a ton of games and be a top seed or one of the top seeds in the playoffs. But right now they're 9-3, and what Eric Spoelstra has done. Because first of all, you got to be able to handle Jimmy Butler. And there's a lot of teams that don't want Jimmy Butler and pass on Jimmy Butler, Celtics included to some extent, because of his locker room antics, I guess, are the best way of putting it.
The Minnesota behavior left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths and scared off a lot of people. The way he willed himself out of Minnesota was very uncomfortable in the eyes, right? Don't you agree? And very distasteful to a lot of NBA old guard people. And he so that put him in a certain category. And Philadelphia, that specifically did it. And Philly, I don't know, not so much, but he is a very talented player. You're right. He was kind of toxic, but things seem to be working out very well in Miami. It's the composition of this roster is fascinating. I mean,
don't disparage Duncan Robinson. Whatever you do.
Don't you? Who can't? You gotta love the Duncan. I know somebody that loved the Duncan Robinson story. My friend Dick Quinn out in Williams, where he got started. That's right. Williams College. Transfers to Michigan, and then he winds up having a substantial role now on an NBA team. But the youth on this team, the rookies, Tyler Hero, who was, then of course the mystery guest for a lot of people, Kendrick Nunn, which is
come down to earth a little bit. But I like the roster in a sense that it's Jimmy's team, which Jimmy wants, right? Everybody else kind of falls in line with that, and it's a good blend of youth and experience. And guys who are playing to their potential. I mean, like Myers Leonard is making threes at a crazy rate, and he's got help inside with Bam Adebayo, who's a rebounding machine, right? Yeah. Tyler Hero, as you mentioned, Justice Winslow's hurt, but he comes in. He's just kind of a jack of all trades type guy who can do a little bit of everything. And you got Dragic coming off the bench now.
That's
and being
a key
okay
thing.
with it.
That's a key thing. He anchors gives him a second unit of substance, and he's willing to do this at his age, which is good. He should be, but he is. He's doing it. That's a very important part of this mix. Another guy that just found a nice home now, Kelly Olynyk.
Solid role guy.
Found a home. And the last time we saw him, of course, in Boston, he was throwing in 25 points in a playoff game, a couple of years ago. But he had to go. He had to be sacrificed, in a cap deal so they could get some. And he's found a niche, and he's a useful player. How about this new net? I got to admit, I knew nothing. Chris Silva. This is like a revelation.
South Carolina.
This is a revelation. I didn't remember him or anything else. And so another guy, I would dare I say, off the scrap heap, right?
Oh no, you could say off the scrap heap because Frank Martin was ready to kill him a year ago at the start of his senior year. He was awful, atrocious. He came in with a lot of hype because he was on the Final Four team for South Carolina a couple of years ago, but ultimately he had a disappointing first half of the year, bounced back, and absolutely nobody thought in a million years that he would be playing a significant role. And again, that's where I think Spo is one of those guys. Early on, it was, well, he's just a mouthpiece, right? He's just, LeBron, Dwayne Wade. He's not coaching. He can't coach. He was an assistant who just got the job, and all he's doing is being a yes man to LeBron. But now, look at what he's done, Bob. Is he one of the top 5 coaches in the game right now? If you were to say, is Spoelstra one of your top 5 coaches, does he make the cut or no?
I got him as my 6th man.
Are you 6th man? You couldn't get him in there.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, here's what do we include Pop, or we just put him in his own category?
Class?
His own category.
You got to include him. He's an active coach. We put him at 1.
So do you want my list now?
I want your list now.
All right, and it's not easy, and I'm not going to go to the mattress with this. This is, but I got Pop 1.
Yep.
I got Steve Kerr. I got Doc.
Yep.
I have Rick Carlisle.
Yep.
And I got Mike D'Antoni. And then I got my bench. Leading my bench is Spoelstra.
Yep.
Brad Stevens.
Yep.
Budenholzer.
Yep.
The guy I call Elmer Gantry, because if you saw the movie and the frantic look, Quinn Snyder is Burt Lancaster is Elmer Gantry. Go look it up. It's hilarious. I call him Elmer Gantry. You got Elmer Gantry and you got Terry Stotts.
All right.
There's my 10.
So again, Pop 1, no argument. 0. Steve Kerr 2, no argument to me. I mean, he's won 3 titles in 6 years. I know he's had Hall of Famers. I get it. But managing people is half the battle, and there's nobody better. There's nobody better in the league to me than Steve Kerr at that. So I'm in agreement with you. You had Doc at 3?
3. Yeah.
I think I'd go Spoelstra 3.
I'm not going to the mattress. Fine. Okay. Go ahead. That's 3.
2 titles, and he's done it with talent and really kind of without talent and overachieved without talent or without elite level talent. So I might go Spoelstra 3. I'd go Doc 4. Mm-hmm. And then 5 is a major toss-up for me between, I'll give the 3 guys, Carlisle, Bud, and Brad Stevens. And I know people are going to say, well, you're a homer. You're putting Brad Stevens in there. They were terrible last year, but that dude has overachieved every other year. When we look back at those 2 teams that went to the Eastern Conference Finals years from now, and we look at those names, we're going to say, how the hell did that guy get that team that far? No,
I think he certainly is in this discussion. I don't think too many people would disagree with it. I'm just looking at when I look at the complete roster, by the way, of NBA coaches. Boy, there's a lot of stumpers in there for people. People that there's a lot of guys that are Taylor Jenkins. People don't know who he is. Lloyd Pierce, people don't know who he is. There's a few more that people don't know who he is. I'm gonna ask you about a guy that I think is a good coach, and I'm really pleased that his team has given him an opportunity to weather the storm, and that's Brett Brown.
Yep.
And I'm happy that he's got a chance to coach a good team, and that he was working for people that they all laughed at at the plan, but the process, but you know what, there was a process. You might not have liked the process, somebody, but there was one, and it is bearing some fruit.
I'm a fan of Brett again and how he deals with people for the most part too. And I think he's had to weather a tough situation in which, you had Sam Hinkie in the process. And then, oh, by the way, you had the Brian Colangelo train wreck.
Oh, well, yes.
Right?
Yes.
The burner Twitter account here of his wife.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's had to deal with that, plus the personalities of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, which didn't exactly mix. Then he was throwing Jimmy Butler. Now he's finally got, I think, a pretty good locker room with Tobias Harris and Al Horford added to it. They've got their flaws, but I do love Brett Brown. And again, I hope he makes it. And he was another one with Mike D'Antoni, who was probably coming into the year. Which coach is going to get fired first? Yeah. A lot of people had them as the favorites.
Now I have to offer a full disclosure for people, and that I am, and you probably are too, somewhat proprietary towards a guy whose roots are in Maine. and who played for dad up in Maine and who's got Boston University connections. And so, yeah, folks, I'm a little bit biased in favor of Brett Brown, but I do think that he deserves the benefit. I'm glad that they gave him the benefit of the doubt and he still has that job. I want to throw two names at you because you get around more than I at the moment that I sense are very admired and popular among insiders. Steve Clifford.
Yep.
And
He's
Kenny
done a
Atkinson.
good job.
And Kenny Atkinson.
Yeah, I mean Kenny Atkinson.
Keep
obviously
your eye on
the
them
job
when
he did.
if they get healthy this year. If they, right, Levert's been hurt and Dinwiddie's now hurt, but if they get healthy, don't sleep on them in the long run. They'll be at least annoyingly good, not a threat or conscious. But I don't think they're any train wreck in any way. The Nets, I think, so with him. So we'll see.
Next year's the year to really judge Kenny Atkinson when he has to deal with KD and not deal. I mean, when he's blessed to deal with KD and Kyrie and see
Kyrie,
how.
And I know, I offer sympathy to anybody within the Kyrie conundrum, so we've discussed that and we will, I'm sure, continue to discuss it as the season unfolds.
Kyrie's back though, Bob. Are you going to listen? I'm going to be away. When
I'll
Kyrie
be there.
Comes back,
27th.
I think it's November 27th.
It's the night before Thanksgiving. Yeah, Kyrie's return is tonight. If he's not load managemented out of the game, which I already hear a rumor he might.
Bob, he cannot blow this game off, can he? I mean, how cowardly would it be if Kyrie doesn't play in this game?
It would be horrible. I know. He's got to want to play. He's got to fight to play this game. But so I'm going to be there next Wednesday night. Yes, I'll be there.
Will you boo him, Bob? Will you as a fan, will you boo Kyrie Irving?
My stump speech is that he's not an evil person. He's a complicated person, and we'll let it go at that. No, I won't
What
boo.
will you do?
I'm not going to boo anybody.
And look around and see what everybody else thinks?
I'll be in the press row. I'm going to, observe some decorum.
And what do you think the reception will be from the Bostonians of Kyrie?
I really don't know. I suspect it'll be mixed. I think it'll be Porzingisian reception. Yeah, Mets. Yeah, it'll be. Matt,
I think you're being kind, Bob. I think you're being kind. I think he gets crucified.
I do. Okay, all right.
I think everybody flipped on him, so quick. And again, his condescension to people, I think even the fans, the general fans could see that in post-game clips or wherever they watched him. I think they were just done with him. And, I think he gets absolutely crucified.
All right, well, we'll find out next week, next Wednesday night, the 27th. They come to Boston.
Well, going from Kyrie to another point guard, a young point guard who is fun to watch, and that's John Morant from Memphis.
You hit
2 overall pick, averaging about 18 and 6 so far, shooting the ball much better from 3 than I thought he would, although it's a small sample size. This kid is electric. He is so much fun to watch. And here's what is sets him apart, Bob, is he's got the freak athleticism and the gear that's similar to Russell Westbrook, but he's got the court vision. I compared him to kind of a combination of Westbrook and Mike Conley. He's got the court vision, the ability to make people better like Mike Conley. Now, he does throw it around the gym a little bit too much and take chances, and his turnover numbers will need to be cut down. He'll need to value the ball a little bit more, defend more consistently, all of that. But, man, this kid is so much fun to watch, will be a cornerstone for Memphis. I said before the year started, I think John Morant will have a better NBA career, and I know I'm going to get crucified again for it, than on Zion Williamson. Am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts, because we first of all, we're all breathlessly awaiting the debut of Zion Williamson. But the questions about him, the technical, legitimate questions, exactly how he fits into the NBA role, will the body type work against him in the long run? Is it already working against him with 3 ankle problems before he's ever set foot in a regular season game? Is that the issue at all? I don't know. I'm just asking, just throwing it out there. What exactly is in the NBA? I can understand that. Remember, we both agree, and I think everyone would have agreed, he had to be the number one pick because the marketers would have shot, on Fifth Avenue, as they say, the coach and the administrators, if they didn't pick him in number one. So whoever had number one was almost duty bound to pick him. But Ja Morant, I'm glad you pushed that button there. I joined up. I watched him play the Jazz on TV the other night, and I'm now a paid up member of the fan club. Okay, I sent my application in and my check into the fan club about this kid. I got to talk about the one play that got my attention, which is he's coming down on the break and he goes a million miles an hour, and he puts the ball behind his back, left-handed. He's right-handed. Remember, he puts the ball down on his back on the dribble, on off the dribble, transfers to his right hand, and banks in a scoop shot without another dribble. Now, I've never seen a lot of basketball. I've seen in a lot of years. I don't recall ever seeing anyone do quite that way, particularly when I know it was his offhand. That was another one. Then he makes another move down later on. He's coming down on the break, and he takes off from the arc, the block charge arc, not the 3-point arc, and throws it down in traffic with an explosion finish that took my breath away. And it reminded me of one thing only, which was the youthful Derrick Rose, who had that capability. I call it the late life on the fastball equivalent, and I think it's so good that he's in that city, which has had, let's face it, an essentially blah franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a little juice with a little while, but basically when Hubie was there, they had, but this is a perfect place to stir excitement. He can, I think it's a good landing spot for the league, for him to be in its team to juice up a franchise, and he can do this, I think.
Yeah, Zion hopefully comes back here. The timeline, he's been out about a month since that the knee surgery. They said 6 to 8 weeks. So we're talking, I bet it'll be closer to 8. I mean, they're not going to rush Zion.
They have to
back.
be 1,000%.
There's no reason.
No, they got to be 1,000% certain that they don't want to have a recurrence in any way based on a premature return. No way. No, you're absolutely right. But I don't think I'm here to support your premise that you weren't crazy but about this whole thing. We'll see. But I'm big on Morant. I think this kid's, and I'm just thinking as we speak about another guy we've talked about. So we got two really good dynamic young players with somewhat similar attributes, and that, of course, Trae Young being the other one.
All right, so I'm glad you brought him up. I'm glad you brought Trae Young up because I've always been a Trae Young fan, and I remember talking to him and his dad. We were at the Final Four, and I ran into him in the hotel, just kind of hanging around, and he was kind of down because a lot of people. First of all, he was the second best player, considered the second best player on his AAU program. He played with Michael Porter Jr. Okay. And Michael Porter got all the headlines as the number one player. And a lot of people overlook Trae because he was small. He took some crazy shots. You could see some of the talent, but not like it is today, obviously. So we were talking for a while, and I'm trying to bring his spirits up and say, hey, listen, don't worry about the rankings or any of that crap. It doesn't matter. You start over when you get to college. And obviously he took the country by storm. I was there. It was at the PK80 in Portland when he basically started his college career and started going nuts. And I remember calling somebody at ESPN and saying, hey, listen, we need to get on him now. like we did with with whoever, KD and whoever it was when they were in college. He's going to be that electric, and they did fairly quickly. I did not think, Bob, that he would be able to come into the NBA and make the impact he did because of his body. And his dad kind of agreed with me. When I said it, his dad almost said, yeah, I know he's going to need a year or so to acclimate himself because really we didn't think he was a one and done. Nobody did. So Trae Young, what he's done to establish himself, again, a guy that has some Steph Curry-like skills in a sense that he can shoot it from deep and from anywhere. And he's also got incredible court vision. Now, what he's got to do, I think, is the biggest thing for him is be adequate like Steph has been on the defensive end. Steph was not good early, and he's turned into an above-average defender, not a brutal, not a guy who's going to hurt you on that end. And if Trae can do that, man, he could be the best point guard in the game, and soon.
I was going back to my rant for a minute. I looked him up in last year's Blue Ribbon, just out of curiosity, before his come out year at Murray State.
You find him?
Oh yeah, I mean, he averaged 12 points a game as a sophomore, but he was a comer, and he was clearly going to be the best player returning. They lost a couple of guys, but his coach talked about his defense as well. He talked about it, that they were thinking of him as an asset almost before they were talking about his offense, but no one expected him to explode to go from 12 points a game as a sophomore in the OVC to what you're seeing now in the NBA 2 years later. Nobody was expecting to see that with Ja Morant. So this is great. The infusion of talent like this. It's
good young point guards. That's what we need. I got a quick story for you on Trey too. So last year they're playing the Bulls. I went to their shoot around, interviewed him, and I said to him, hey, Trey, some people have said that Oklahoma's a better team this year without you. A year later, they're better. And he looked at me, he said, yeah, some like you. I said, yep, you caught me. I have said that. And, again, the one thing was that Oklahoma team a couple of years ago with him, they could score the ball, but they all stood around and watched Trae Young and nobody guarded. Where it was kind of the opposite last year. And that's where the Hawks have to be better, right? They've got to learn how to play with Trey. He's got to learn how to play with everybody else, keep them involved, and defensively they've got to step it up, and he does.
Yeah. So, no, but we were talking about good coaches earlier, and I think we both agree that they've got a good one. And
no doubt, no question. All right, let's hit one college topic before we leave, and I head to hopefully sunny Charleston. Actually, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is actually watching this kid, Anthony Edwards, who is in the equation. He's like a big, strong, athletic two-guard, Bob, in the kind of Dwayne Wade mold a little bit. So I've seen him a little bit on the AU circuit, but I'm really looking forward to seeing him. He plays for Georgia, so he's going to put up big numbers. Georgia's not very good. But let's talk about the big story in college basketball, which is Kentucky. And John Calipari. They beat Michigan State in New York. Tyrese Maxey goes crazy. You were talking about him. He looked phenomenal that game. Phenomenal, making shots. And then they come back and they lose to Evansville and good old Walter McCarty. Yes. Good old Walter.
Walter, we love him.
Tommy Heinsohn would love it. And then they almost lose to Utah Valley and Mark the Mad Dog Madsen's team in his first year. They go right down to the wire and almost lose. And they were without two starters, if you want to call them that, because I don't really think anybody's a lock starter in this Kentucky team. There's not that much disparity from 1 to 10, and that's the biggest problem for John Calipari. He's always had a star, always had a stud player for the most part, other than maybe the year that they went to the NIT, the Nerlens Noel year. They didn't, and they ended up going to the NIT. Now, Nerlens got hurt mid to late season that year. But this team is underwhelming, completely underwhelming. I don't know who their go-to guy is. It should be Tyrese Maxey, but it's not.
After the opening game, we certainly thought it was going to be Maxey. I was babbling about Maxey after that game. There's no question. For people who don't know, they won 82-74, but it was a 1-point game with 3 minutes to go.
That's right.
And it is now already there's, in the wonderful world of Twitter that we live in, they're going crazy out there that about a conspiracy theory that this is all Cal is letting them slide so they can dig themselves out of a hole on purpose, to learn by adversity, and it's all calculated. Please, I don't think you need this kind of adversity. Do you?
No, you brought him down to earth with the loss to Evansville.
We thought that was going to do it, right? Didn't we assume that was going to be it? That would be the catharsis. That right away, okay, game 2. Okay, guys, they were humbled. You got them attention in practice, and for it to almost happen again, to dare I say, a lesser, Evansville's at least picked to win the league, I believe.
No. Evansville's down the bottom of the.
I'm sorry, they were number 8. I'm sorry.
Neither team.
I was thinking about somebody else I saw. No, they were not picked to win the league, of course. But anyway, Utah Valley State. Mark Madsen, forgot it. Yes, Stanford lives. Yeah, we forgot about the Mad Dog. But anyway, you have to laugh at that. But this is inevitable. Was it not inevitable, Jeff, that something like this thought process would crop up in the world we live in the Twitter world, it's inevitable somebody's going to come up with some concocted, theory.
Well, especially with Cal. Of course, it's going to be some Kentucky fan saying, yeah, this was all prearranged. Cal wanted to get their attention. No, like I said, he got their attention after the Evansville loss. They wanted to blow out Utah Valley. They couldn't because, again, down the stretch, they're going with two players, Bob. Ashton Hagens is their point guard, okay? Great defensively, but not a scorer. And he's kind of having to score a little bit and take some shots in the closing minutes, as is Nick Richards, who is really their third best big guy, not overly skilled, hasn't really improved all that much in his third year now at Kentucky, was a former McDonald's All-American. So now I think, do the Cal critics get after it now, Bob, because this is year 10. I believe this is year 10 or 11. I think it's 10. And he's only won one title. Now, K's won 2 in the last 10 years. Jay Wright has won 2 in the last 10 years.
The last 4 years.
Right, exactly. I'm just going in the decade, but you're right. You're absolutely right. So is Cal now at a point where Kentucky fans, if they have another year, which I don't think they will, and I said this to Kentucky fans of Big Blue Nation, settle down, because as bad as you guys look, and you look like garbage right now, the overall landscape in college basketball is very underwhelming, and there's not a dominant team. And Cal does have a young team, and once they get healthy, they'll get better over the course of the year. They'll be in the top 10. So I wouldn't worry that much. But are they a team that can win 6 straight? You look at it now and you say, no way in hell.
I have wondered at times in the last couple of years when the Big Blue Nation, if they might get antsy about this. If year after year they're getting a top 3, 4, 5, 1 to 5 class, they're reloading, they're having they're winning 30 plus, but they're not getting it done in the end, and except the one time, and if they're going to get antsy, it's inevitable. Maybe their expectation level. It's just like you realize that at halftime of the Alabama LSU game, that the Twitter world down there was going crazy about Nick Saban, and to the extent that get rid of Nick Saban, because I'm serious. And someone posted it on Twitter 4 tweets immediately about, we had enough of Nick. So if that can happen, anything can happen, right? In this crazy world of passionate world of college sports. But so I'm sure there's some people saying we need more, a bigger bang for our buck in the Big Blue Nation. But I'm with you in terms of their MO is almost annually they get better, no matter what, no matter how good they are, they always get better. They'll get better. And but it's scary, it's scary for them. I mean, this is embarrassing, really. Oh, by the way, I know what I was thinking about, just so you know, about picking who was number 1. I saw Belmont. Upon your recommendation, I went to see BC Belmont on Saturday. And by the way, the big kid, Mazinski, didn't even start. He must be something going on. He was strange. He played limited minutes, was no factor whatsoever. But Adam Kunkel, who
never heard of him,
comes in averaging 2. Well, if you look in the preseason, he's just another guy. He's just another guy, might get time. Guess what? They played 3 games now. He's gone 20 plus, and 35 against BC. He's a 6'2", 3 guard who's a combination jump shooter, nice drive to the hoop. Belmont was picked number 1 in their league, and they looked like, they reloaded. They lost a couple of players, including an NBA player, but they're going to be, trust me, they're going to be fine. It's going to be another big year for Belmont.
BC can't be losing to Belmont at home if Jim Christian wants to continue as the coach beyond this year.
Well, but you and I know that it only an ignorant fan, people that are less sophisticated and understand that losing to Belmont is no disgrace.
No. It's not. But if you're BC, you still have to beat them at home. Again, if you want to keep your job, if you want to, finish in the top, you got to finish probably in the top 8, 9, and 10 in the ACC to have a chance. I just don't see this. And I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this pod about Boston College basketball. Nobody gives a what about it. But I don't see that this program is heading in the right direction at all. And I don't know how many games I'm going to go to at Boston College basketball, Bob, but it won't be many.
Well, I want there's always the opponents. both the current number 1 and 2 AP ranked teams will be coming to BC right now, Duke and Louisville. So yeah, there's that to look forward to. Okay.
That'll be nice. All right. Well, let's get out of here on that, Bob. And thanks for joining us. Another edition of the Good and Plenty podcast is in the books. Are you off next week, Bob?
No, week after. I'm around next week. I'm definitely with you next week.
I'll be in.
We'll have.
We'll be doing it. I'm going to be at my brother-in-law's in Ashburn, Virginia. So, and it's loud there. There's going to be a lot of kids, everything. So it's going to be it'll be an interesting pod to see how we pull that thing off. But I'll have I'll give you some good restaurant reviews. I just got to see. The problem is I'm going to be in Charleston at games all day. 4 games Thursday, 4 games Friday. Saturday's an off day. I'm wondering if any of these restaurants will deliver to the arena.
Well, maybe put in a good word for you if somebody can do that.
I got to try something.
All
right. Well, listen,
okay.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next week on the Ryan and Goodman podcast. Thanks again for joining us. This is Jeff Goodman, host of the Good and Plenty podcast on the CLNS Media Network. We've got 2 podcasts. Every Tuesday, we've got the NBA edition. Anyway, I've known Boogie a long time, and I like him now. We didn't get along forever.
Hold on. Since you bringing up Boogie, Jeff, have you told the story you and Boogie's interaction a few times? That would make for golden podcast material right there.
When he cornered me coming out of STK in Vegas. Every Thursday, we've got the College Hoops edition where you'll find the top coaches, players, media people. You get insight that you will not find anywhere else. So subscribe to the Good and Plenty podcast wherever you get your podcasts or find us on www.clnsmedia.com.